All right, folks, we're going to be working now on the Module 6 assignment, which is the student report generator. I'm just going to begin the video by just kind of describing what needs to be done. And then we'll work on it for a while, and then we'll come back and see what a solution looks like, time permitting. We still have a good hour left in class. So, I mean, for all intents and purposes, we should be able to get that done. Let's take a look at what we are supposed to do. It says, in this assignment, you're going to create a student management application that outputs files based on an input from the user. All right, so, and this will apparently put together all the concepts from all the modules. So you're going to be drawing from all of your stuff, but it's going to be most similar to what we were just doing in lab 4. Right, first we're going to create a class for a student object with minimally the following members. So first name, last name, username, semester, and program. Right. We'll have an init, which will build all that stuff. And then we'll have a string, which will output all that stuff as methods. Right. That I think is pretty straight ahead. We've done this a bunch now. You can just look at the one that we just did, probably tweak it a little bit, rename it, and you'll be good. And then it moves on and does this. It says all new students should have the following validation: a username of 6 letters and 2 numbers, a semester, which is an integer, so first semester, second semester, etc. And then extra credit, create a list of 3 programs that ensure the program is in the list. Remember, that's extra credit, so that's like overachieving. Don't have to do that one. All right, create a list of students with at least 4 students in it. Kind of been doing that stuff all along too. So that's just basically taking this class and pre-populating a list, using the constructor for it to build the student objects. That's a pretty easy one. Then create a menu with the following functionality: list students, add a student, remove a student, create a file from students, and then you do all these individual tasks. So here's how we're going to do this. All right. I'm going to help you guys get started on all the stuff that's kind of, I'm going to call it pedestrian and kind of repeat. All right. So in other words, I'm going to help you with all the really easy pieces, the low-hanging fruit. I'm going to get you most of the way there. And then I'm going to leave kind of some of this other stuff here at the bottom to your own efforts, basically, or at least temporarily to your own efforts, to kind of challenge you a little bit, because this is a higher point assignment, by the way. And then we'll coalesce in, I'm going to say about 45 minutes and take a look at the solution. And I'm going to give you guys the option here, by the way, as I'm recording this even, to either work on your own, or if you want to choose people to work with, you can do that. So I'm going to create a whole bunch of breakout rooms. And if you want to talk to people and say, hey, meet me in room 5 or something like that, feel free, right? If you want to work on your own, you can work on your own. And some people prefer to work with others. Some people prefer to work on their own. But I want you guys all to give it that attempt, right? So that's kind of the lay of the land. All right, so let's get started with the basics, right? So I think the first thing you should do, start with file management, right? I'm a huge fan of that, and I already have done that. I've created a module 6 assignment folder inside of my folder structure. So that's where I'm going to put this program. So I'm going to go ahead and just create the file in there. So now that I have that highlighted, I'm going to hit new file. I will call it module. Well, actually, you can call it by what it is. What's the name of it here? Student report generator, if you wish. All right. So, all right, let's kind of do that. So let's call it student report generator. So, and then .py. Now, if you want to store files in a folder, it might also be wise, following the examples that we've already done, to create a folder within there and call it, how about student files? Makes sense, right? Kind of relative to what we're building. So there's our storage location. All right. If we're going to run a menu, do we want to use the helper file? Okay, hint, hint, hint. I think so, right? Let's go ahead and do that so we don't have to reinvent the wheel. So I'm just going to copy the helper file that we have. I'm going to bring it over to the assignment folder here and paste it on in. So now that's accessible to us. All right, as we just did in the module 4 labs, I'm going to grab these or these two imports, not four, two imports, and then I'm going to add them to our new program. So we're going to import the get int. If you want to do the get int and range, you can do that one too. Whatever you want, that's okay. It's on you, right? And we're going to import the operating system piece as well. Now let's go ahead and create a class of student with this stuff. And you know what? I'm going to be kind of lazy here, right? What is it? The triple, right? So I'm just putting it in there so I don't have to go back and forth, right? And then I'll delete it. So let's start with the class declaration. Let's call it student. And let's go right to the init function, double underscore here. And then we'll self-refer, and then we'll do first name, last name, username, semester, program, right? All of this. And then we will self-assign each one of those. So self dot first name equals first name, self dot last name equals last name. It's typing because I'm not using good posture. I'll shift myself over in the chair and sit upright. Still not helping. Just continue on that pattern. This one, program. So there's all the data fields there built out in the object. Then we want to do string function, self in there. What do we want to return? What makes sense? You know, well, I'll leave that up to you. The format is really pretty irrelevant, but you want to output all the information somehow, right? So you might say something like, you might actually choose to do last name first, followed by a comma, and then the first name. And I'm being silly here, right? Because these should be self dot. That's why it's not popping out, by the way. Self dot first name. And then we're going to want to list the username, the semester, and the program. And I'm not sure what the best layout is for that, you know, so you can be very, you know, opinionated on this. I think that maybe having like a blank line, right? And then outputting maybe like username, self.username. Maybe then another blank line. And then below it, program. screen here. Let's turn on word wrap. Program. I'm just trying to think of how that would list. Like it would say, like, I don't know, networking space semester colon self dot semester. Is that all the information? I think that's good, right? I mean, that's all of it. Will that look okay? We'll find out. We'll find out when we output it. All right. Anything else we need to add to this? I don't think so. So next directive then, so that can go away. The class is created. What's our next directive? Create a list of students with at least 4 students in it. Now, I am noticing that they have all new students should have the following validation. What does that sound like? Little regex, perhaps, right? So we're gonna have to go back and research that little piece. And then where do we check that is the next question. Well, we can probably do it right when it's being input. I think would be a kind of fair guess. We'll come back to that piece, but let's do this because this is pretty straight ahead. So why don't we create a list of students, and that's a good name for it, plural. And then it's going to be an array of student objects, and then we're going to create the students as we put them in there. So we're going to call the constructor, and then we're going to feed in first name, last name, so whatever. So start, typing up some names. I'm going to put in my info. So the username has to be, let's see, 6 letters and 2 numbers. That works out well for me. And then I'll just say 22. The semester, let's say I'm in my 3rd semester and my program is web software. And that should be, all of these should be in quotes, right? Taking a bit to catch on. What about the 3? Text or number? Anybody want to debate on it? Well, I think one reason you might want to leave it a number in case you want to do math on it. Like you could, like, just thinking forward, right? Like you could have, when was it created, right? What semester are you in or whatever. It could be numeric. Then we're going to do a comma, and then we're basically going to just redo that over and over again. We got to get at least 4. You need to come up with what they are. So I'm just going to invent names now. Just go with some basic ones. Have fun with it, I guess. Comma between each one. They say exactly 6 letters. Yeah, 6 letters, so we have to truncate that, right? So I think I got my list there. Manual process to type it in. Builds character. Or you could just ask an AI to do it. All right. So now we need to do a little bit of building here. So I'm going to start. Um, I'll create the menu and I'm going to create the list, the listing of students for you. And then I'm going to kind of leave you guys to do the rest. You get a bit of time, and then we'll get together and see if we can figure it out and have a solution. Of course, you still have a couple days following the class to do that. All right. So let's build a menu. So coming all the way down to the bottom here, this is kind of been our typical approach, while true. We'll do a series of statements here. What are the things we need to do? All right, so watch how I do this. This is kind of cheating a little bit. Just going to use a plain text editor here to kind of shortcut my process. And you guys can be, or attempt to be as clever, I guess. I'm just like using it as basically like a buffer. Uh, and I'm just trying to save on typing here. And what I'm basically doing is maybe building my function names in advance. And I'm just going to paste them all over at once. You guys feel where I'm going with it? Like those names. And I'll even take it a step further. Put in the parens. And I'm just doing this so I don't have to do this over in the editor. And that way I got them all set to go. Isn't that slick? Right. They're going to look a little ugly for a moment because I'm going to paste them there and then move them down. But we're going to also come up with a print. You want to make it look nice on you, right? I'm going to keep it really basic and I'm just going to say, oh, what are we going to say here? Menu. And then we'll prompt to get a choice. We're going to use the get int, right? I'm going to borrow the menu from my lab number 4, or the if statements from lab number 4. And I'm just going to take the function names now and just basically replace them. See, it's how handy it is to have them. And really, I'm being silly about this, right? I shouldn't cut them. I should just copy them, because then I can build the functions with those names, right? Exactly. So sometimes you have to think about it a little bit. All right. So those are all created down there. Now I'm going to put defs in front of all of them, colons after, and a temporary pass for each one. Let's repeat that process. So like you can be clever and just copy paste. Sure if it's faster to just type it, but whatever. Right. There we go. Pretty good so far, right? Got a lot of it done. Now we have to build the other pieces, and this is where we want to kind of take our time and think about how we're going to, for example, do this. So if I'm going to list the students, what am I actually doing? Where am I getting this from? Is this coming from a file, or is this just coming from the list that we have? That's a really good question. And this is one that we have to think about here. Let's look at the directions, right? Okay. All new students should have the following validation, right? And what I'm seeing, right, is that when we're adding a student, where are we adding it to? I read this as we're creating another student object. We're not necessarily writing it to a file yet, right? We're just putting it in memory. So how would we do that? We would append to the list, right? And then let me ask this question. Then if we're going to list the students, what are we really doing? What's the action we're actually taking? We're going to be reading from the student list. Okay, so what's the process for that? Does that sound pretty repetitive? It does. So for each student in students, and if you want, you could make that an S, right? So we talked about that, just kind of like shortening it, because it just makes the syntax easier. What would we do? What's the output if we're just listing them? Somebody give me some syntax. Could I just do a print? And then if I F string it, and what would I put inside here? Would that call the string function? You guys? Somebody nod. Okay, yeah, that would call the built-in string function and return all this information. So in principle, we could test, is this all we need to do? Is that all it takes to list the students? Well, here's how we find out. Let's save it. Let's give it a run. All right. We only have one of these working so far. And there you go. It didn't output what I wanted it to, that's for sure. So what's failing here? All right. Here's my challenge to you, but this isn't far off, right? And I thought I would give you this piece, but I'm not going to. So what you guys need to do is I'm going to pause the video. I'm going to send you guys all in the breakout rooms. You're going to work on this, and then we're going to come back in the last like 10 minutes and I'll run through a solution, right? And the offer once again is you can work alone, you can work together, however you choose to work. So I'm going to open up, I think, like 18 rooms, and then you guys can either decide to work together or not. That's on you. The recording's being paused right. Sorry about that. Just wanted to show you the fix. I had the F here inside there, and that's why that didn't work before. So here, let's exit the previous version of the program. Let's run it again. We're just trying to list students at this point, and you can see that works, right? It's very, very simple listing. So it gives the name, the username, and then their semester. You know, maybe you could add a little bit more to that if you wanted to break it apart. Maybe a line break at the end wouldn't be a bad thing. But you know, the general point is we're just listing from a data structure that already exists. So that's one of them. Now, if you wanted to add a student, we could do that in a couple of different ways. So the first thing that we would want to do is, if you want, you could look back at what we did in one of the earlier labs. So let me actually pause the video here and I'll get a good example up to kind of make it go as smooth as possible. All right, so I'm just copying from, you know, module 5, lab 4, by the way, if you're wondering where I'm getting my code from. I'm going to be looking at the wrong thing. That's the one we want. All right. So here, first thing we want to do, and I think I'm going to start doing this just as a matter of practice. I'm going to put blank lines at the beginning of everything because it's kind of get a little space between things. But we're going to be capturing all those pieces of information that we need to create basically one of those objects. So we're going to need first name. And since we have our helper file, right, we can call on get, you know what? And we'll have to add this up here. So get letters would be probably useful. So we have that function here. So I call it now down here. And then I'm just going to prompt first name. Of course, if we do last name, we'll do last name equals last name. Oops. What else we need? The username. So the username is one where we're going to actually kind of want to concoct it, I think, a little bit. But you know what? Maybe we just have the person build it. And let's prompt them in a way that helps them. All right. And then we'll check to see if it's valid afterwards, right? We'll do the regex thing. But let's build the prompt first. Let's say enter a username 6 letters and 2 numbers. We're going to let them type it. I'm just going to put a little note here. Regex. Deal with that piece later, but let's just get all the information. I think the next one thing was the semester. And, all right, so what are we getting here? We're going to get an integer, right? So we're going to get int. So let's just use get int. And we'll say enter your semester number. The last piece of information is your program. Let's just say we'll do get letters. Let's say enter your program name. Now, okay, what you could do here, right, and this is the extra credit piece. This is where you could have it look up your program on a list and then see if it's valid or not, right? That would be extra credit. So if you do that, I'll give you some points. Then once we have all that information gathered, then we will append that to the list of students, which we call students, or we'll say students dot append. And then what are we appending? We're going to just send in the constructor of student because it's going to build the object, and then we're just going to add all the stuff we just grabbed. So first name, last name, username, semester, like so. Okay, so that will build it out, and that's the adding of a student. I am going to go back here on all of these. I'm going to add a blank print line to everything just for little breathability. This is a way to say it. Right. So anytime I'm going to output something, let's get a blank line in there. In fact, let's do that here too. Let's put in a blank line every time we print out a student name. All right. I guess it's time to let's test it in a primitive way, and then we'll figure out the regex thing. In fact, maybe regex is one of the last things we can do. I would say the other functionality is probably more important. If it's still running in the console, don't forget to quit. And then let's go ahead and test these first two options. All right, so here's the one. Right, so that's listing the students. Did it do it? It sure did. Notice the extra spacing in there. It does make it a little easier to read. All right, now we'll try adding a student. All right, so clicked out of there by accident. A username, so let's H T. He's a monster. He should have a 13, right? There's his username. Ah, okay. So we made a mistake here in our code because now it's asking for only letters. So that let's stop this from running. We'll kill the terminal. So we don't want to do get letters here. We just want to do a plain old input. All right. Saving, executing again. So let's list works, right? Yep, it sure does. Now we're going to add a student. Let's try the same cleverness here. It's not like that. Let's just type in something simple. All right, so now that we have him entered in there, I didn't like the space in mortuary science. I thought that was kind of interesting. but I guess that was kind of set up with regex, wasn't it? So, all right. And then here, um, let's go ahead and list and make sure that he made it in there. So he is in there. So it looks good. Looks like it's working. So the first two are working. Then we want to work on removing a student. All right, so I'm going to borrow from our module 5 assignment on this one. This is where I'm grabbing my code from. And to remove might not be a bad idea to first list the students. So let's call list students. And then let's go ahead and set up a student index to kind of track which one we want to remove. We'll prompt with get int, and the prompt will say something to the effect of, or exactly, which student do you want to remove, right? And these are going to be listed. And okay, so now kind of brings up a thought here, right? Well, if we're listing them, then maybe we need to number them to begin with. But whatever number we come back with, it has to be basically one less, right, than whatever number is listed next to it. That's kind of like the indexing system that we were using. So now we got to go back and add that to the other part. All right, so back up here in list students, we're not just going to list students, and and if you want, you could go a header or something up here, but I'm going to set up a little counter. I preset it to 1. We did this before in the module 5 assignment, right? This is where this kind of is borrowed from. And so I'm going to say for every S in students, we're going to do a little bit of output here. So we're going to let it output the stuff it's already doing, right? We're just going to let that piece just happen. But we want to, ahead of it, maybe add a line here. So maybe we should say, for example, print with f string the following. We could do maybe a blank line. I don't know if we, no, I don't know. We already are doing a blank line. All right, so we don't need to do that piece. No, actually, now I'm thinking I do want to do that because this is inside of a loop. And I'm just going to say student. And then I'm just going to print out that index number. So it's going to number them. Then I'll do a colon, right? And then it'll list them, right? And so that entry will be numbered. So let's save that. Let's run it really quick just to make sure that it, you have to quit the previous version, run it again. We're just going to list the students, right? And okay, so maybe the extra line wasn't a good thing in there. So I'll get rid of that print at the beginning of the function. All right, let's exit out. Let's close the console here. Let's get rid of that one. Saving it, running it again. Here we are with listing the students. All right, so I'm taking the print out of the wrong spot apparently. Once again, right, exit. Let's get rid of it. Okay, well, no, actually it's here, right? So that's where it's happening. So let's put it in here. All right, this is the winner. That's what you said last time, right? Well, now that's even worse. Okay, maybe right in front of the student 1, we put in that blank line, but I think basically that one's pretty good. Backslash in there. I think that should be fine. All right, so that's the first piece. All right, so the next line here, and I'm recording this now again, would basically be to take the student, and then we would pop that student index value. So we pop the student at that particular item, and I'm thinking here, oh, that's not right because it's got to be students because it's a students list. So it's the student index at that particular spot in there. Um, and then let's make sure it worked. So we could list the students again to show that it worked. So that would be remove. All right, let's test at this point. Now, you guys want to see the precursor to all this? It's all been recorded up until this point, so you can watch it in the aftermath if that's helpful for you. I will very quickly show you how to create a student file. We can do that a number of different ways. I'll leave the regex piece to you guys though. And so real close to the whole app provided basically. All right. So let's run this part of it. Let's make sure it's working so far. It looks like my previous iteration is still running. So I'm going to relaunch. So here's the fresh launch. We're going to list the students that already exist. You can see that's working. Looks like my number's not updating though, is it? Yeah, it's not. So we have to fix that. All right, let's stop the program running. We'll exit out cleanly. And so where do we fix that? Well, we got to increment I right here. So I would plus equals 1. Saving, running again, listing the students. It's now their numbering. Yay. Right. Let's add a student, option number 2. So we'll do first name. Right. Funny with that at least a little bit. Let's take a look at the list. There he is. And I'm sure I forgot my camera's off. I apologize. Now let's try to remove one. So we're going to click back in, hit remove. It gives us the list so that we can pick which of the students. I should probably put a blank line in front of that. Let's choose number 4. And then did number 4 get removed? Yep, because now Herman is number 4. So remove is working. So now if we're going to write this to a file, so this is kind of the challenge here. Do we have an example that we can draw from where we can take that student list and write it to a file? Well, I think we probably have a couple of examples. So like if we were just to look very simply at the last lab that we created, we could maybe mimic this one. What do you guys think? Right. And well, okay, maybe that's not the greatest example, but could we output something like that? So could we, like, for example, take a student, read it into memory, and then output that to a file? Could we append it to a file? Yeah, we could totally append it to the file. And so this is where we might look at, like, we had that one example here somewhere of append, right? Where we could do something like this, and this just adds it to the end of the file, but instead of writing these words, we could maybe take the string function that's already built into the object and just print that in. Yeah, why not, right? It would totally work. All right, so let's kind of follow that approach. So I'm going to grab this code here. I'm putting it on my other screen just for handy reference, by the way, so I can just look at it. All right, let's go back. And I'm going to come here and let's set up a couple of different things. So the first thing I'm going to set up is I am going to kind of borrow a little bit from here, right? So I'm going to borrow this piece. So let's come back, program here, and under create, I'm just going to follow that little piece, but this is going to be, what did I name my folder? Student files. This is going into the student files folder. And then the name, are we going to hard code this? I think we could hard code it, right? Or I could set it up so that it could read and do all that fancy stuff. I don't want to do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to hard code it. And so watch what I'm doing here. It doesn't say we have to make it all fancy and dynamic. And I'm just going to type a thing called current students, and it's just going to brute force create that file. Right. Well, this doesn't do the creation here, by the way. This is just setting the name. So now to create the file, we can borrow the approach that they have here, right? So if you look at, like, one way to create a file is to just use the write command. So a really simple command like this would work. So I'm going to call it file. And then we're going to just do open. We're going to feed in the file name. Right? That's just a snippet of text. And then we're going to use the W switch. And now the file is created. Now the job is to loop through the list of students, running the string function basically by just f-string printing it. And then that will take care of the rest. And each one of those will happen in an append statement. So let's do it like this. Let's write it loop, and we'll say for S in students, S being a student, we will open the file. So this is where I'm borrowing that code. So I'm going to say file, and then we're going to open, and we are going to call the file name. And then we are going to issue the append switch. And then we're going to write in with a simple print f from the string function built into the object. It also has the line return in it and everything. So for S and students, we're going to output each student into that file, right? And that's going to append, but I'm not doing it correctly. I need to do the write command. I'm looking at the wrong sample of code. So I'm going to take the file dot write, and now we're going to put in the f string here. Careful which example you're looking at. So we're opening it now in append mode. We're going to add on to the end of the file. I think we should be good. I think let's try it, right? Now, we also should, by the way, close our file. So let's do file.close. And hopefully this works. It still thinks we're running that old version. So now let's try it again. There we go. All right. We know we have these students already in here, so I don't need to go entering any in to prove that this works. But I do want to create the student file. And, now that I'm thinking about this, I probably should have put a message at the end saying file created. Right? I didn't do that. Okay. Supposedly it did it. Only one way to find out is to look in the student files. There's the current students. And there's the file. Oops, except you're not seeing it. There you go. Not the prettiest thing, but it is getting the information put in there. It looks like I could use a carriage return here at the end, right? So this would probably be best added in the string function up top here. Just throw it in there like that. And then you could, I mean, you could add more to that, but I think at this point, all of it is working. It's just a matter of testing. All right, so here's what I'm going to do, right? For those of you that have been kind enough to stick around, I suppose. And there's tweaks we can make here. So if you want to keep hanging out, I'll throw in the regex piece in just a minute. Here's the class, the list, and the imports. Here is list student, add student, remove student. Here is create student file. And then the menu, which I think we had before. Kind of like these functions here, are probably the part that you guys were kind of working on. And I think, generally we have it in there in a way that works. The regex piece, if you think, where did we contend with that piece? Right. So if you guys, you know what, let me do a pause here. So if you guys recall, I'm just using all prior examples to kind of build stuff, because I'm hoping this is how you proceed with your problem solving. But we're gonna check and see. Basically, we're gonna ask for letters. We want it to be 6 letters, right? Not 4 to 6, but 6. We want upper and lower case, and then we also want 2 numbers. So this one is actually really, really close to being what we need as in terms of a regex like statement. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to kind of grab all of this code here. This is kind of really goofy, but I'm going to put it over on my other screen here so I can just kind of refer to it. And I'm just going to borrow from it very, very heavily, apply the logic that works for the program that we're working on as opposed to the one that this is. Just find my program. So here we are. All right. So we're going to go ahead and still prompt, and in this case for the username, this is okay. So now we just need to really basically process that. So, and I could, by the way, I could set up a loop to make sure it's checking continuously, but I'm just going to assume it's going to be done correctly, right? If I wanted to set up a loop, I would actually go back to that same example, and I forget which one it is now. Lab 3, okay. And just basically follow this exact thing and put it in the loop and just have it keep prompting and prompting and prompting. And that's kind of on you if you really want to like set up that structure. I really think that's kind of excessive for what we're doing here. Back over here. Let's apply that regex formula now to this. And let's just put, so we need to import regex. Okay, so I forgot to do that part. So let's do that. Import. So that will allow this to function. And then the basic function call on this is just re.search. And then in parentheses, the correct syntax. And so I'm going to kind of, once again, borrow it from that string that we had. I'll tweak it a little bit, but I'm really, really close on this. So this is the search string. We want it to be exactly 6 characters. We want lowercase and uppercase. We want numbers, and then we want 2 numbers, and then this is called user name. This is going to return a true or false. And then, we could, I'm just trying to think here, what would be the most efficient way to do this. Yeah, I think we just set up like a is match equals this return true or false. And we could hopefully, you could write an if statement here to check it, and you could borrow the one that we have. That's the one that we had imported. This stuff is all indenting poorly here, like so. And then what you could do, right, is you could write this into a loop, right? And then if it matches, you would actually just, jump out, and these should be changed to username. I guess I'll just go ahead and create. Doesn't seem like there's like a way around it. So, while true, indent all of that. Just checking my syntax here. All right, so there we go. I think that should work, right? So if it's a match, we jump out. If not, right, so they're going to get continuously prompted until it happens. All right, let's give that a try then and see if it does work. But are we getting all the pieces of info here? I think we're okay. Right, and then if we add a student, I think we want to end with listing the students, right, to make sure it works. I think that would be smart. All right, let's try this, see if it's good. All right, there it goes. It looks like I'm still running from before. So once again, relaunch. All right. Let's go ahead and try that then. I'm trying to remember which function we're trying to run. It's sad. All right, we're adding a student. So it doesn't really matter what the name is, right? It's this username piece. Right, so you can see it keeps prompting. So let's put in 6 letters, 2 numbers, okay, semester number, program name, whatever, misspelled. There it is. All right, so there it is with regex thrown in the mix. All right, and there's the logic on that in a loop. If it's right, jumps out. If it's not, keeps going. Simple as I can make it. And folks, that's the solution for the exercise. So once again, let's take a look at all the code. Remember, we added the import for regex. with a student class, created a student list, functions to list student, add student, functions to remove a student and create a student file. And then finally the menu and the selector that drives it all. All right, that's the solution, folks. That's all she wrote for the semester. Thank you.